Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick Malejak from PIARC, and I'm very happy to be here with you today for our webinar on the COVID-19 crisis and how new technology can help address the various impacts of the crisis on roads and road transport. So as well, you know, and you've seen, we have 4 distinguished speakers today from South Korea, from Singapore, from Germany, and from the United Kingdom. They will introduce themselves in the presentation. Some rules for our online meetings. Well, I hope you're accessing this from a device that allows you to see visuals, because there will be lots of visuals. Please mute yourself and keep the video turned off so that we can avoid background noises and connection overload. Do use the chat feature in Zoom so that you can ask questions at any time. Don't turn on your microphone to ask questions. Please use the chat and text your question. We will collect the questions and direct them to the proper panelists during the Q&A session later. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, please be sure to have your full name and country displayed. You can rename yourself here in Zoom. Please include your full name and country so that, well, everyone knows who they are talking with and who has joined our meeting. Please turn off your camera. Hello, Bill, and your microphones. So if you want to ask a question, raise an issue, or even share how you are doing things at home, this is really encouraged. This is a discussion session. Please use the chat feature for that. It's at the bottom right of the main window, I think, and send the message to all participants. Of course, please only include questions that are specific to roads or road transport. That channel in Zoom is monitored by Christos Xenophontos, who is the chair of one of our PIARC committees. Christos will raise the questions to relevant panelists when the time comes. About your name in Zoom, as I said, please rename yourself accurately because this really fosters interaction between participants. The session is being recorded. The resulting video will be shared on our website. Our speakers today will come from different backgrounds: a university, Land Transport Authority in Singapore, another university in Germany, and a business and a motorway operator in the UK. Thank you very much to our 4 distinguished panelists for having made themselves available today and for having prepared such excellent presentations. The key concept, so why are we here? We are focusing on the short term. The world is going through a crisis, and we can see today that different continents are at different stages of the pandemic, and every day really counts. At PIARC, we're convinced that we want to share knowledge and current practice urgently in order to support responses to the pandemic in near real time. Such knowledge and practice may not have been confirmed as valid or effective, and what works in some parts of the world may not be relevant elsewhere. However, inspiration can be found anywhere. This is really what we do at PIARC. And a good idea now could save lives, could help you improve your business resilience, and could help you minimize disruption of services. In parallel, we are planning medium and long-term actions for when the pandemic is in a more manageable state and more under control. We have set up a response team, 10 colleagues in total. I'm very honored to be working with them from different backgrounds, different topics. Thank you very much to Christos, Jose Manuel, Jonathan, Valentina, Yukio, Savario, Caroline, Martin, and Andrea for the work we are doing together. And this webinar today was in particular organized by Valentina Galasso, who is with Deloitte Consulting, who is the chair of our Committee on Road Network Operations and Intelligent Transport Systems. Thank you, Valentina. The agenda and structure, well, this is something you've seen already. So what is PIARC? PIARC is the new name of the World Road Association. We were founded in 1909 as a non-profit, non-political association. Our goal is to organize exchange of knowledge on all matters related to roads and road transport, which is exactly what we are doing now. We have 4 key missions that are assigned to us by our members: to be a leading international forum for analysis and discussion of all topics related to roads and road transport, which is what we're doing now, for example. Also, we convene meetings, we convene seminars. To identify, develop, and disseminate best practice and give better access to international information, well, the video recording will be shared. We publish a new report every month on average, and you can check on our website all the reports that were prepared during the 2016 to 2019 work cycle. We intend to consider within our activities the needs of developing countries and countries in transition, also known as low and middle income countries. We involve experts from those countries to take part in our technical committees. We organize seminars there, and we invite them to share specific needs that they would like us to address through specific projects, maybe. And fourth mission is to design, produce, and promote tools for decision making. You may have heard of HDM4 or QRAM, which helps with decisions related to dangerous goods in tunnels. How do we do that? We mobilize the expertise of our members. We have a very small team, central team, and all the expertise come from the members, experts, senior experts who are mobilized and nominated by our member countries. Currently, we have about 20 technical committees and task forces with about 1,000 experts from all over the world nominated by our member countries, and we currently have 124 member countries. Our operations are guided by a 4-year work plan, which we call strategic plan. It's available from our website as well. It presents all the terms of reference of our committees and all the expected deliverables. If you're not familiar with that yet, I invite you to check that document and maybe identify some committees that you may want to interact with more closely. Of course, today, Valentina's committee, the Committee on Road Network Operations on NITS, is really the main one. I see someone raising their hands. This is not something we're using. So Irfan, please send a note on the chat, and Christos will try and answer your question. Thank you very much. So what are the issues faced by road operations? So there are many issues, of course, and we have tried to structure that around 6 key issues. The first one is, well, you need to ensure your employees' health and safety in general. This is true of every organization. And in our case, road operators, road transport operators, administrations, we have staff that work in toll booths, for example. We have customer-facing staff. We need to be sure that they're safe. We also need to maintain activity, that's number 2, even though many of our colleagues and staff members are working from home. How do we do that? We need to ensure business continuity. It's true that traffic has decreased in many countries during the peak of the crisis, but the roads have remained open, as you have noticed, and this is a piece of work in itself. The third issue is to, well, monitor, analyze, and act upon the impact on transportation. Decreasing traffic may mean, in some cases, we've seen that in some countries, a good opportunity to conduct roadworks, but also it has meant in many countries decreasing revenues. How do you address that? Business relations, of course, is a key element of any organization. You have suppliers, you have providers, you have partners, you have clients, and you need to maintain that in our current very difficult conditions. The fifth issue is to maintain proper relations with your customer and stakeholder. This includes ministries, the police, health and safety forces and administrations that you need to report to and that you need to take the guidance into account. This is true of many organizations. In your case, in road transport, do we want, for example, to help enforce social distancing in vehicles? The sixth issue is security. In particular, cyber security. We've seen a sharp increase in cyber attacks during the last few months. This may be related to the crisis because many workers are or have been working from home. Those issues were presented in more detail during our previous webinars. We have prepared 2 notes based on those webinars. They are available from our website. They are relevant for the road community, hopefully, and may be useful to inform planning and operational decisions that have to be made on the ground. They're available from our website for free in our 3 working languages, which are English, Spanish, and French. So this is all for my short introduction. If you have questions about PIARC, for example, please don't, well, ask that question in the chat channel. And having said that, I invite Seonha Lee from Korea to please join and make his presentation. Seonha?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes, very well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar today. It's very pleased to sharing what I've done with you guys all. The topic of today's talk is maintaining the social distance by an appropriate pedestrian system. I'm working for Kongju National University in South Korea, and my name is Seonha Lee. I studied in Korea University in Civil Engineering and Bachelor, then studied in Germany, Berlin and Karlsruhe, doing a master's and PhD. Currently, I'm working for Kongju National University from 2000, and I'm a committee member of PIARC in Korea. And I also started my small venture business within the university campus. It's called TOMS. TOMS is doing a lot of transport consulting projects from 2017. And I was also former president of Korea ITS. The contents that I'm going to talk today, first of all, I'm going to explain the background of this research, and explain the case study, and sorry for the numbering, but number 3, talking about the methodology. Within the methodology, we'll discuss about the simulation setup and scenario setups and result from the simulation outcomes, and we're talking about result and have some discussion at the end. As we all know, and the coronavirus has lost many lives, and the economy is getting worse. The IMF expects that the most countries will see a negative growth rate this year and next year. Many countries are implementing lockdowns, but it is too economically difficult to do it until the corona is gone. Currently, many countries, of course, including Korea, has started limited economic activities. At the same time, the social distance is encouraged by, of course, the government, but the legal limitations are still absent or weak. So it's not a mandatory, but it's more like a recommendation. So in this study, was conducted to prepare some kind of system to keep the social distance as an engineer. In particular, I try to think about how to safely use the facilities while putting social distance in places where a lot of people get together. Yeah. From a little background about this, China is actually the #1 training country for South Korea. So the Korean government quarantined people from airports and ports because the economic blow was too great to prevent people coming from China. Although it spread from people coming to Korea in early stages, the Korean government has effectively prevented the spread of coronavirus. As you can see, the graph here on the left-hand side, the early February this year, number suddenly significantly grown up until April 15. Then it increased again. So, but at the time, it was very early stage of the coronavirus. So we have got we thought we have too many the cases in Korea, but now if you look at the graph on the right hand side, since March, then the other countries found a lot of cases. So now, well, Korea is very small number of cases are found, and then more cases that can be found in many European and United States. So, but the South Korea still do not practice a lockdown, unlike many other countries. That's the situation now in Korea about the coronavirus. As a study area, I looked at Seoul railway station. Seoul railway station is located in the heart of Seoul, the capital of South Korea. There are many tourist attractions and shopping areas around this station. And this station is actually the largest railway station in Korea. And of course, it's used by many people. And if you wanted to transfer to subway line number 1, line number 4, and also airport line, this Seoul station is the main station to transfer. So in terms of methodology as it follows. According to the HCM, the level of pedestrian service is specified like in the table. You see, each service level was presented for density, traffic flow, and speed. So in this study, the design of facilities capable of social distance based on density was devised. So based on the 1.5 meter recommended in social distance setting, it can be seen that in the table, the service level can be C. This is the Seoul station layout. The first floor of 3-story Seoul station is the platform. So first floor is a platform, and second and third floors are waiting spaces with a lot of facilities, such as stores and then ticket boxes. So as the input data, the number of passengers entering and leaving this whole station gate was used as a input data, and timetable, of course, was also designed as a actual operating time. So here, all the modeling job was designed in the VisWork, that is PTV, pedestrian simulation software. So we utilize this software to see the social distance in the facilities such as Seoul Station. In the simulation, there are many parameters we needed to consider. So this work is actually simulated by pedestrian flow theory called social force. So there are many parameters used in social force. Among them, the following table is modified to maintain a distance of at least 1.5 meters. The corrections of this parameter value was performed by trial and error. So obviously you can find better values to design this modeling on your own. Yeah, the scenario, I designed 4 scenarios. So scenario A is a normal situation without coronavirus. So social distance is not established. That's the scenario A. And scenario B is when people voluntarily place a distance of 1.5 meters, regardless of facilities. So there's no such a good system, but we encourage and we recommend people to keep the distance of 1.5 meters. So that's very volunteer work. And the scenario C, I've got C1 and C2. They are same. They can scenario C1 and 2 were painted on the floor so that people could follow that painted line, so that they can keep a certain distance. Difference between C1 and 2 is when C1 goes in 2 lines in parallel, and C2 goes 3 lines in parallel. Yeah, the screen shows the platform, okay, but originally there is no orange line, and as shown in the figure, it's marked in the orange so that passengers can go out to the waiting area by following this orange line. So the passengers exit through the defined line according to the location of the doorway. So if the passengers getting off from the railway that is closer to the stair, they can use the first line, and they're far away from the stair, passengers can use the second lines like this, as you can see in the figure. So this is showing some results. You can see scenario A, B, C-1 and 2. The picture shows whether social distance is being practiced using a heat map. So as you can see, scenario A is not making social distances, as of course the service level is EOF, particularly the area where there is the stairs. You can see red dots. That means people are too much close, the density is too high. B is good, but since it's a volunteer request, it's difficult to apply realistically. Okay, but scenario C1 and 2, as you can see, that looks all good. So it's through the simulation running. Sometimes the red color appears a little bit, but in general, the scenario C, it shows very good practice of social distance. So I wanted to show you some videos. In a way, you can see all these 3, 4 scenarios all together. Little buffering appears, unfortunately, but so as you can see, bottom figure, you could see the orange lines that people can follow it. As you can see, the first one is already very red, and scenario B, you see many red guys appeared, but scenario C looks okay. So as I as a result, according to the prediction, the epidemic, such as a COVID-19, can continue to be prevalent. It's necessary to establish a systematic circulation system that allows the customers to maintain social distance all the time, particularly in multi-dense facilities such as a complex history, shopping malls, and stadiums. The various circulation system alternatives, considering the purpose of customers' activities and health and the appropriate capacity calculation, considering these are possible through walking simulation, as in this study. At the government level, establish standards for each facility for pedestrian system to maintain a social distance. for multi-tenant facilities and establish system to monitor it. So basically, we are all encouraged and recommended by government certain rules in this pandemic, but that's probably a naive way to do so. So as an engineer, probably if there is some good system that we can do, we can help people. That would be great. I don't think that painting the orange lines in the platform doesn't cost too much, but so it can be very effective. And also, we always need to be careful when a lot of people get gathered together. Then you probably have some certain recommendations through the simulation. So we can probably need to redesign our facility. People here in Korea believe that we cannot really go back to where we used to be. So after this COVID-19, we need to really redesign our the way of life. We've got to be also carefully design our facilities too. So using all these simulation, we can see what would happen. Then it definitely can help. What is the best practice we can do before implementing in the real life. This is all my talk. Thank you for listening my presentation.
Thank you very much, Seonha. This is very useful. It's great to have simulations like that that can help the decision makers actually make the proper decisions rather than just guessing. And that's congratulations. And if you have questions, anyone, please use the chat feature in Zoom. This is monitored by Christos. And if you have just joined, please make sure that in Zoom, you use your full name and your country in your Zoom name. You can just rename yourself. That's rather easy. Next panelist is Chandrasekar from Singapore Land Transport Authority. Chandra, the floor is yours. Let's just make sure that the microphone works. Yes, it's on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick, for the opportunity to share this presentation. Hello, everyone. This presentation is prepared jointly by myself and Weeping. I've been with the Land Transport Authority since 1995, working in areas of design, traffic management, road safety, transport policy, and stakeholder engagement. Presently, I lead an 800-member team and accountable for the maintenance, management, and regulation of road assets, safe operations of traffic on the road, as well as the management of vehicle and active mobility offenses. Weeping has been with LTA since 2000, with experience in ITS, traffic modeling, traffic data analysis, and demand management. As a traffic specialist, she advises on traffic engineering matters. She also leads a division on data-driven analysis, congestion pricing, bus priority systems, and autonomous vehicles. Next slide, please. I will cover my presentations in these headings. Next slide. The Land Transport Authority has roles in 3 key areas. Firstly, a planner, designer, and builder of the entire land transport infrastructure. Second, as a regulator of vehicles, public transport, point-to-point, and active mobility schemes. And third, as an asset steward of the road and rail network, commuter infrastructure, and buses, as well as the operator of the road network. Next slide, please. Within a short term, there's been rapid development in both resident population as well as vehicle population. The resident population has grown 3 times in over 5.5 decades, while the vehicle population has increased by 6 times during this same period. Next slide, please. A multi-pronged approach towards optimizing road space has been adopted, balancing transport provision and demand management. Besides providing the public transport options, the road space is also optimized by leveraging on various ITS systems. Next slide, please. This slide shows a snapshot of the ITS systems that we use. A number of these systems have been implemented for traffic operations via a central ITS platform. In the past, various ITS were operated as standalone systems. But since 2005, these were integrated into a single platform called the iTransport. Ground sensors analyze and provide alerts on traffic situations to the operators, who then use these information to devise mitigation plans and disseminate information to road users. These sensors have captured the data which we have used in our analysis, and I will present them in subsequent slides. Next slide, please. A cornerstone of our scheme is the road pricing. Introduced in 1975, the road pricing was a manual resource model in the areas of selling paper licenses, collection of fees, and enforcement to detect non-payment of fees. Then in 1998, the process was automated, leveraging on technology to detect vehicle types, process fee payment, and capture violations. This ERP system is also contributing towards the data collection. Based on traffic studies, the optimum range of speed operations were derived and are used in the calibration of rates. A quarterly review of traffic speeds on the priced route or corridor is done. Next slide, please. The traffic situation arising from COVID was tracked under these 5 window periods. The first on your left is the pre-COVID-19, where traffic patterns were at normal state. Thereafter, between February to March, when the national alert was set to orange, besides temperature taking and quarantine of affected persons, mass gatherings and events were cancelled. Many organizations started their business continuity plans. In our case, we had to start on shift teams, split them by location, by space, and by time, including our traffic control center. With more cases, added precautions in the form of more safe distancing measures were implemented in late March. Then, in early April, to help break the chain of spread, a 2-month circuit breaker period was announced. This is equivalent to the lockdown that many of us are accustomed to. All non-essential workplaces were closed and schools started home-based learning. Recently, the first phase of safe reopening was started. Although more workplaces are allowed to operate progressively, working from home is still the default mode. Next slide, please. This is a busy slide that has the key observations from our tracking. Let me summarize it over here. With the evolving COVID-19 situation, there was a drop in traffic volume of less than 10% in the initial weeks, but reached 20% when safe distancing measures were stepped up. Eventually, it would reach 53% when circuit breaker came about. The central business district experienced the largest drop of up to 30% during the safe distancing measures period, and dropped to almost 65% during circuit breaker. This is expected as the business district contained all the office premises and all these transactions were done from home. Expressways experienced reductions from 20% during SDM weeks to 50% in the week of circuit breaker. With progressive workplace closures, the long-distance commuting trips dropped. However, one of our expressway serving the north-south corridor continued to attract high demand, as many essential workplaces were located in close proximity to that route. Arterial routes in general experienced slightly lower drop of about 12% during SDM and 45% during circuit breaker. These roads served local essential trips as they were located within residential areas. Next slide, please. In tracking the expressways and arterial roads, we noticed a progressive drop in volume with a corresponding speed improvement. Arterial road speeds exceeded the optimum speed bands from the SDM period, but expressway speeds only achieved that during the circuit breaker period. Next slide, please. While general bus ridership started to fall, it was only during the SDM period that speeds increased by 2.8%. This is the speeds of the bus, journey speeds. And it took almost a 70% drop in ridership before the bus speed increased in the order of 11%. Now, with more workforce commuting in phase 1 of safe reopening, the public transport ridership is increasing and a corresponding drop in public bus journey speeds is noted. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Can you see the slide? It's about
yes,
electronic road
Patrick,
pricing.
next slide.
I have the slide on my screen. Can you see it? It's
yes.
about electronic road pricing, right?
Got it, yeah.
Thank
right.
you.
So the ERP review at this point in time was done on a quarterly basis. And it was necessary to do this to recalibrate the rates. But the COVID-19 situation had a significant impact on this well-established policy. With the traffic speeds trending upwards, the next quarterly review would be some 4 weeks later, and this would not be reflective of the prevailing operating environment. This led to us to make an important policy decision, which I will explain in the next slide. As the traffic situation was changing rapidly, we embarked on a special ERP review, and a significant number of gantries were scheduled for rate reductions on the 6th of April. However, our plans for these changes were halted when the circuit breaker measures were suddenly announced. So an urgent policy and operational response was made for the suspension of the electronic parking systems ERP rates at all gantries. And this has been applied for the entire duration of the circuit breaker. With the easing of the circuit breaker, ERP charges remain suspended, but we are closely tracking the traffic speeds. At this current moment, the total volume on the arterial roads is still at about 60% of the normal rates, and on the expressways, it is just about 80%. Therefore, the suspension of the ERP rates is valid. Next slide, please. This chart shows the trends in the daily traffic volume that entered the CBD environment. As you can see, it was progressively reduced from pre-COVID to the DOSCON orange, all the way down to SDM. The circuit breaker period was when all non-essential travel was ceased resulting in the lowest point. As we come out of the circuit breaker, phase 1 post-circuit breaker, initial data shows that traffic begins to return. Next slide, please. This had a major impact on our obligations towards maintenance. Resource availability impaired our role as asset steward, and we had to prioritize the maintenance tasks by focusing on the safety-related work aspects. We also focused the cleaning frequency at high human touch points and at locations with environmental public health issues. The use of technology has enabled us to manage these obligations efficiently. All feedback will be fed through a mobile app system, which is then translated into action by the service providers. Whenever rectifications works could not be performed immediately, necessary visual cues were then placed around the area to maintain safety. Next slide, please. I'm now coming to the last part of my presentation. It is about the efforts we have taken in supporting the community and our organization's staff. The public transport system adopted the safe distancing measures from March. Besides the mandatory wearing of face masks, there was also the need to maintain safe distance from others by sitting or standing only at designated spaces. In addition, on the active mobility front, mask wearing and keeping a safe distance was also mandated. Enforcement officers were out patrolling to enforce the above requirements and mete out necessary fines for non-compliance. However, to complement this effort, we leveraged on our organization's Blue Rangers program. In this program, our staff would volunteer their time to give back to society. These volunteers set out in the public transport system and in the active mobility environment to engage and promote safe distancing measures. Next slide, please. We also use our variable message signboards to spread the stay home, stay safe message during circuit breaker. We also showed appreciation to healthcare workers by illuminating several iconic bridges in blue light done as part of the Light It Blue campaign. In addition, with almost 6,000 staff working from home since mid of March, our human resource colleagues devised online engagement sessions to help with the emotional well-being of our staff. Next slide, please. In summary, technology readiness has enabled us to continue carrying out our core functions without affecting service levels. ITS has provided valuable insights to traffic and public transport trends, gaining additional level of understanding into the travel behavior arising from this unique situation. Maintenance regimes were adjusted whilst maintaining safety for all road users as a priority. Digital platforms and technology allowed us to continue to support the community and the staff through these challenging times. With this, I thank you, and I thank Patrick for being patient and clicking the next slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandrasekar. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much for this great presentation. I can see in the chat channel that there are questions directed at you. So thank you very much for that. And I invite everyone to really use that feature, the chat feature in Zoom, to ask questions to our panelists. So it's time now to move on to our third panelist, Martin Margreiter from Germany. Martin, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, very well. Thank you.
My name is Margreiter. I will tell you today a little bit about a general presentation about impact on the different traffic modes due to COVID-19, as well as some measures and some current research which we are doing in Munich. Next slide, please. Briefly about myself, I'm working as a research group leader at the Technical University of Munich, and also I am a lecturer there, as well as at the TUM Asia in Singapore, our dependance there, and also I was 2016 a lecturer and guest researcher in California. Since some years, I'm also have founded, I'm currently the partner there at Mobility Partners, a consultancy in the field of mobility, also located in Munich. And until the beginning of this year, I was also active as the director of the Innovation Hub Central of the EIT Urban Mobility. That's the European Institute for Innovation and Technology. And since some years also, as you can see in the picture on the bottom right, I am member of the Committee 2.4 on Road Network Operations and ITS within PIARC. So I promised you to tell you a little bit about the impacts on different traffic modes, which we were observing in Munich, in Germany, in Europe, and worldwide due to COVID-19. And first of all, I want to talk about air traffic, as this is the most obvious one. And there I have brought you a nice chart or a nice picture showing you the flight radar data or the plane tracking data over Europe in two different times. Once before COVID-19 shutdowns, lockdowns, and other measures were in place on March 7. And also 1 month later, you see that at the same time, just 1 month later, the situation of the flights being tracked over Europe. And you already see this is quite a drastic decrease, especially in the transnational air traffic. And if you go to the next slide, you can also see that data in a chart here now that we have a decrease of almost 200,000 flights per day to only 1/4 during the Corona crisis, at least at the beginning. We're shortly now having some more flights, but still the numbers are very low. And if you go to the next slide, you see a similar situation for our airport here in Munich, which is one of the biggest hubs in Europe. And there you see also the situation before and after the shutdown in Bavaria, which is the state of Germany where Munich is located. And you see here in light blue, the actually tracked flights. So the tracked flights are the ones which actually happened. And you see also even before the shutdown happened, and especially afterwards, you see quite a drastic decrease, which is still ongoing, as you can see in the chart on the bottom right. Please be aware it's a different scaling. So actually it's almost lower numbers now. So we have around 30 flights per day happening only in comparison to between 400 and 500 in normal situations just some months ago. Looking at the same situation in US, here's a nice chart about the airport security check numbers in US by the Transportation Security Administration, TSA. And you see here in blue the line of the year 2019, or the beginning of the year 2019, where we had approximately 2.5 million security checks every day across US. And the same chart is shown also in red. The same line shows the same numbers 1 year later during COVID-19 times. Also here in March, you see quite a drastic decrease of partly less than more than 90% less people than before were checked at the airport. So this obviously shows that air traffic is one of the biggest, has one of the biggest impacts due to COVID-19. And looking at mobility behavior in general, we were checking also cellular data and used information from that. And as you can see on this chart or in this picture, you see here the whole Germany on the right-hand side. And the colors indicate a decrease in the number of trips by the inhabitants. And you see here a comparison of beginning of March, so the 7th of March, which was before lockdown measures, and then directly after lockdown measures on 21st of March. And especially in the part of Bavaria, so this is the bottom right part, which is mostly green, where we had the most strictest restrictions for moving restrictions. And you see quite a drastic decrease just 2 weeks later on the same weekday of up to 80% less trips. So this is mainly using anonymized data from cellular phones. If you look at also again in cellular phones, but this time in the app usage, so I brought you here a chart from a navigation software, Apple Maps, from the iOS phones. We see here how many requests, or what is the change in app requests. So how often did the users use the app to request a certain trip or information on a certain trip from A to B? You see here three different lines. So red is the requests for navigation while driving a car. Yellow is the line for walking, and purple is the line for requests for navigation used in public transit. And you can see here also that for all over Germany, the numbers have decreased drastically by up to -60% for public transit, which is the highest decrease. So not many people are using navigation there anymore, which is also an indicator for reduced mobility. And if we look at road traffic, you see here on the left-hand side a motorway, an Autobahn in Leipzig, which is normally very busy, hardly any traffic during lockdown. On the right-hand side, the same for a major arterial in Munich. And if you go to the next slide, you will see also an example in Munich, where we see on the left-hand side a situation in 2019 on a typical Monday morning in April, and on the right-hand side, 1 year later after COVID restrictions in 2020. So on the left-hand side, you see that roughly around 20% of all the roads show congestion indicated by the red color. Whereas on the right-hand side, after COVID-19 restrictions, the transportation network in Munich during the peak hour at 8 a.m. is almost not really a peak hour anymore. It's just 22% of all the roads show minor congestion, but it's almost empty in the city. If you look all over Germany, here we have a comparison between, again, the situation of 2019 and 2020 on the Easter Sunday, which was this year, April 12th, so also after the lockdown. We see here also for the major arterial or the major road network in all over Germany that we have in lots of the roads more than 80% less traffic than in comparison to the same day the year before. And if you look at this at the trip level, so how many trips are actually happening in the different counties in Germany, this is now a very interesting figure, which is showing exactly that, especially in the border regions, so to the left to Netherlands, to Belgium, to France, at the bottom towards Switzerland and Austria, to the right towards Czech Republic, you see a strong decrease in the number of trips which are happening inside of the county. Also, you see that Bavaria, which is the big field at the bottom right, which had the most strict restrictions due to coronavirus, were also in the whole state showing quite a lot of reduction, more than 80% less traffic altogether. And this is not just in German cities, but also worldwide. So this is data from TomTom, a navigation system provider, which is always publishing a congestion index indicating how congested cities are. So you can see the higher the value, the more congestion we have. And you see in red the historical average, which is by far higher than the situation we had in end of March in the different cities. You see also that the most drastic decrease probably happened in the city of Wuhan on the left, where we, of course, had one of the most strongest restrictions, where hardly any traffic was on the streets anymore. Coming to bicycle traffic, there we also had in Germany a quite interesting result. Because if you go on the next slide, you can see that we hardly saw any changes in bicycle traffic. You see here, 2 weeks after the coronavirus happened, we see an increase in bicycle traffic on nice weekends, which was around March 28th and March 29th. But again, after the weekend, actually the bicycle numbers stayed pretty stable in the different states, which are indicated here by the different colors. Pedestrian traffic. There we also saw a drastic decrease. You see here two nice pictures on the left-hand side in France, where a square, which is normally populated a lot by pedestrians, at the bottom you see the picture, is actually only populated by policemen. And on the right-hand side, you see a similar situation in Munich at a leisure area close to the river Isar in the city center, which is normally super crowded, and during COVID-19 times, actually hardly anyone is there anymore. And if we look at the numbers here again for Germany on the left-hand side, we see also a drastic decrease in the number of pedestrians. For the different states in Germany, indicated by the different colors. So even before the shutdown, we saw a decrease. And especially after the shutdown, as you can also see on the right-hand side for Munich in particular, the numbers are now only 20% or around 20% of the pedestrians which we had before on our streets. So last but not least, public transport. There we see here as an example in Zurich, also the numbers of the passengers in public transport vehicles drastically decreased before COVID, which is the 2 weeks which you see on the left-hand side. And then starting from 13th of March, you see drastic decreases in the number of public transport passengers here in this example in Switzerland. Okay, coming now to the measures and to the current research which we are doing at our university. You see here some measures which were implemented, yes, in the public transport, but here in the chart, this is showing a survey which was done during the Corona time, or during Corona crisis, indicating the change in mobility which the respondents were observing in their own life. Marked in green here, you see the numbers which were increasing. So you see for car traffic actually has increased during the time. So the people are responding here, 15% are responding that they use the car now more often than before. Same is for walking, 25% responded that they use it more often now than before. And in red, marked in red, you see the most drastic decrease which happened in public transport and in train rides, where we had large decreases of people in dark gray that they are not using it at all now. And in light or middle gray, you see that the people are using it less often. In bicycle traffic, we didn't see such a big change in the number of or in the respondents' answers. So what are we doing in research now? So mainly we are looking at the moment at the measures pop-up bike lanes and pedestrian zones. Pop-up bike lanes, you can see here what happens. So either with new road markings where we take away space from the road, from car-based road space, and give more space for the bicycles, that they are also able to keep social distancing rules. And if you go to the next slide, you see also another measure here, which I brought from Boston in US, one-way sidewalks, so only unidirectional walking allowed on each side of the road, so that the people do have less contacts. And we are focusing in our research mainly also on this social distancing. Why is it like that? Because not every job allows people to work from home to enjoy the benefits of home office. And additionally, or especially, these jobs are mostly the ones which are relevant or system critical, so the ones which are keeping our countries running. And on trips and on which may either be a job or leisure, especially using public transport, of course, there's various contacts to other people where social distancing is very important to avoid risks. And our questions are now, how can these contacts be reduced by measures? And how can we, of course, at the end, use the limited capacity of our traffic system, especially public transport, but also the infrastructure on the road in a more optimal way during COVID-19 times? So this is already what we are doing currently in research at our university. So we are mainly trying to evaluate measures which are planned or already implemented by decision makers in cities and states to help them to make better decisions and implement proper measures. And how do we do that? It very well connects, I think, to the research presented before by Seonha Lee, our first presenter today, because we are currently observing or using video observations before and after COVID, mainly in public transport stations, in public squares, and on sidewalks and streets, and use this information to analyze, first of all, risks, so social distancing risk because of not keeping the social distancing rules, but mainly also to update and to evaluate and then to update behavior models for simulation software like IMSUN or PTV Visum or Viswalk, so that we can test how did people change their behavior during COVID-19 times, how can we represent that in our models, and how can we use then our newly calibrated and validated models to give better guidance, for example, to the layout or to the planning of measures in public transport stations to avoid high densities, but also to avoid risks on sidewalks and other crowded places. That would be it. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm looking forward to your questions later in the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Martin, for this broad presentation of the impact of COVID on transportation and possible ways forward. Again, for everyone, please don't be shy and do ask questions in the chat now. Just note that you will not have the opportunity to raise, to speak up later. So please ask questions in the chat feature by writing them with your keyboard. So this brings us to our fourth and last panelist, Graham Kingston from the UK. Graham, thank you so much for having made yourself available at such short notice. And I invite you now to open up your microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. As noted, it was a late invitation, but I thank you. Just a bit about myself. I'm a business optimization and handback manager on the M40 project in the UK. A little bit of background that's not on here. I've been in the industry for about 30 years as a maintenance OM provider, working from every level from the bottom up into different roles within the industry, local authority in the UK and motorways. I've also been in associating with UK Innovate projects for innovation with technology throughout the UK, in association with the University of Lancaster. Next slide, please. Okay, the key discussion points I've got here, just to introduce the Egis M40 to give you some relevance of what we do, and the different areas where we are looking to address COVID-19 on our operational delivery to support our business continuity plans, and to ensure that all our operatives are safe on our network. Obviously, the operatives and us as an organisation are key workers, and we were audience to make sure that the motorway networks are kept open. Next slide, please. So what is the M40 project? Next slide, please. Essentially, it's a DBFO contract, which means design, build, finance and operate, and we as Egis are part of the operate and maintain part of the project. As you can see, our client is Highways Agency, which is now called Highways England. It's a 30-year concession with players called UK Highway, PLC, other subsidiaries, and us as Egis M40 road project. It was awarded in 1996, so we're coming up to the end or the last 7 years of the project, and it is an inherently non-IT infrastructure motorway, so there's not that much in terms of IoT availability, hence some of the solutions I've looked to provide some of that data. Next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of where we are, to the right is obviously the UK, and we are from junction 1A of the M40, which is junction 16 of the M25, up to Birmingham. Next slide, please. Okay, part of our project, we do network management, safety inspections, so we drive the network, inspecting any safety defects. We do cyclical maintenance, so that's trees, grass, anything that's on a cyclic maintenance process. We respond to accidents and emergencies, and we also do the winter maintenance on the M40. Next slide, please. Okay, digital network display technology. So we have a network of 3 depots, which are working depots throughout the M40, and the digital display network are digital display interactive boards that we've placed in each of our locations. And if you go to the next slide, please. As I said, I reiterate that we have 4 depots along the M40 and 150-mile network. The introduction of the digital display boards are run from a cloud-based application where we can send out information to each of the different locations independently or as a global response to different areas on our network. The thought was that although you can issue this information on mobile phones, our mobile phones are shared items, and with the COVID-19, sharing equipment, wiping it down, reviewing it, would tend to people not to use that technology. So we have designated areas where it's safe to sit in safe distances, a 2-meter distance as it is in the UK, where we stream information to our workers throughout the different depots to inform them of changes, and especially via the flexible information that we were receiving from the UK government on what we should do in terms of our business continuity. It was a valuable tool to quickly get information out easily and visible to all our network staff in terms of key workers. As you see there, we have pod workforce, so we isolated our workforce so that there was no cross-contamination, and by doing the digital displays, we were able to mitigate any cross-pollination between depots by keeping them in their locality. And it's deemed to be a good process. Additionally, not issued on here, we are also able, with the cloud-based technology, to issue meetings to these boards without a PC, just a button click on a remote control, and we can interact with all our employees from anywhere in the UK, and it was a good visual portal for them. Next slide, please. Next issue we arose is GIS dash cams and ATA inspections. We on the M40 are required to make inspections of all the assets, most of them being visual, and most of them requiring 2 people in a vehicle as they're driven. And historically, what we would do is we would have 2 people in a vehicle, 1 driving and 1 noting the information where they are in the passenger seat, hence requiring 2 people in that vehicle, contrary to our business continuity program in terms of having people next to each other. Next slide, please. So what we did, we needed to reduce the vehicles to a 1-man operation, and the thought was to gain eyes into the vehicles. And due to the availability of hardware at that point in time, we used the available hardware that had GPS and dash cam technology in the vehicles, so they could drive down the network and use the save secure button on the dash cams to record where defects are, not requiring them to stop on the hard shoulder, which, as you probably all be aware, is a very hazardous time. So essentially what we've done is we've put the eyes and ears in the dash cam. As they drive the network, they identify the defects visually, record it on a CCTV dash cam, and locate the information on a GPS location that can be then transposed into a GIS tool where we can identify where the defect is and raise a defect for the workforce to go out and deal with at a later point. Looking at this technology moving forward, it is working. We have also tried Android applications that allow us to record CCTV information linked to the GPS in the phone, which is working very well. What we're looking to do post-COVID, and as we're working on it now, is to introduce AI, artificial intelligence, into that process, along with machine coding, to learn what the condition of the current network is, compare it to what the condition would be at that point in time, to allow a computer to identify defects along the network, changes to the network that we need to be aware of, all being with a single person driving that network. Additionally to that, we could reduce the number of drives, because we also do patrols with our incident support units that go up and down the network, supporting Highways Agency, Highways England, and the police on incidents, and use that travel journey to record that information, have a computer note that information, and translate that into defects or notifications for us to review via video, without the requirement for us to go out, review it again, and without the requirement of having two people in a vehicle. So for us, it's been a really good practice, really good use of technology, and it will potentially reduce resource requirements in the future and reduce our carbon footprint. Next slide, please. So that was this is a little illustration of what we're trying to achieve. So as they're driving down the network, they push a button where they see the defect. In this, you can see we have to locate lamps that are out on our network. As I mentioned previously, we are not an IoT network. There's no sensors on the infrastructure, so it has to be a manual process. But by introducing this technology, we can identify it with one person safely, load it to a cloud location, and be able to review that in the safety of an office, and review that at any time we need to do so. Next slide, please. So this is the hardware we use. Currently, there's a dash cam on the left-hand side. Within the view here is a GIS solution with all our assets in terms of lamp scouts or lamps. So it will play the video, identify where they are, and we can interrogate our GIS system and asset management system to identify what that asset is and raise a defect specifically to that location, so the workforce can go out and fix. To the right is the application that we've been looking at that goes onto a mobile phone, which is iOS and Android available, and essentially does the same thing as the dash cam, and we can export that out to different mobile phones, to different operatives via an MDM mobile deployment mechanism, and use that. So that's what we're using currently and testing, and hopefully we can integrate that with some AI later down the line. Next slide, please. Business applications, customized low-code platform. So because of COVID-19 and our supply chain, we have a platform, Zoho Creator, which enables us to write applications pertinent to the issue that we have in front of us. So if you go to the next slide, please. So we have different challenges. One of our challenges, we had a don't walk by solution. A don't walk by is essentially identifying things that may go wrong, maybe a trip, anything that we deem to be a risk that reduces the potential of accidents happening. Previously, it was all by paper, and they would hand that back to their line managers, or hand it into a central location where everyone was sitting or standing or talking to. By introducing a mobile application, they are able to use any phone, their own phone. It is restricted into terms of security by login. It's GDPR compliant, so no names are used. We can hide the names, we can delete the names where required. So as a business tool, it was very, very quick to deploy, very easy to write, And from that introduction, we have written many mobile applications which link to a desktop application, allowing us to deploy software solutions very quickly without the requirement of a third-party supply chain partner, which inherently would require us to speak to them. And within the COVID situation, a lot of suppliers weren't working. We couldn't get hold of any suppliers to help us out with that solution. We had a requirement to remove paper and remove the requirements for operatives to be near each other and cross-contaminating. So the application we've got here is a very agile deployment solution. There's very little code. The basics are very easy. Any additional works that you might need is easy to understand, and we've deployed a number of applications with it. Next slide, please. So you can have a little view of what you get on your mobile application. So the apps on the left are the apps that have been written, and depending on your login or your ability to use the application, depends on what you can see. As you can see in the bottom left is the Don't Want Buy app, is the one we've been using. Above that is the desktop portal where you can choose that application as well. It's fully, it's got APIs that you can talk to other applications. It can be integrated into Microsoft Teams, which we use throughout the M40 project for communications. We've also got a Huawei's incident management tool that we use with it. And again, if there's any changes required, it's a phone call. Can you do this? Yes, we can. And we change that very quickly. And to the right-hand side, it's just a view of some of the information that's collected on the handheld, what is received back at the desktop application. And you can see it also maps the location of where the form was filled, so we know, and we can then cluster that data at a later date to find out where accidents are happening, where there are hotspots of accident data that we can actually concentrate on. So it's a very, very good tool for collating data that we can use at a later date to increase and improve our business delivery. Next slide, please. Okay, that was me. I apologise. Thank you for listening. I hope it was helpful, and thank you everyone for inviting me again. Thank you.
Graham, don't apologise. This was a brilliant presentation. Thank you so much for having, well, really opened up our horizons here. So I guess there will be lots of questions directed to you. Speaking of questions, this is now the time for a Q&A session. This is moderated by Christos Grynophantos. Christos is the chair of our committee at PIARC Committee 1.1 on performance of transport administrations. He's based in the USA and he works with the Department of Transport in Rhode Island State. Christos, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you once again to all of our presenters for the excellent material that they shared with us today, to our attendees for joining us, and for Valentina for organizing this webinar for us. Our first question, will go to Seonha. And, do you have any examples of transport operators who use this analysis and have acted on it?
Yes, I thought I needed to type all the answers, so actually I answered in a typing hit there. But this is very early version of the simulation model, and then now this model got a lot of attractions by local governments and universities too. So I tried to make this propose this kind of this methodology to central government in a way. Central government can set up some regulation when they design such a facility. So we still believe, as already mentioned, that we don't believe we cannot go back to the way we used to be. So this kind of virus will come back again anyway. So it's not late to do so. So I think we should keep working on that, and then just make sure when the operators utilize the simulation, just make sure all the parameters are calibrated correctly. So we can have the best practice in reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Seonha. And our next question goes to Chandra. And Chandra, in Singapore's experience in terms of ITS integration and use of data to get value for road operations looks impressive. Did you implement specific features to manage the situation during the COVID-19 pandemic? For example, did you use new algorithms or new tools in order to deal with it?
Thanks, Christos. Yes, the data that we obtained from the sensors was very beneficial in two important areas. The first was related to our congestion pricing model. The norm was to look at the review on a quarterly basis. But as we put in an algorithm to let us know what is the downward trending on a weekly basis, we were alerted of the situation, and that set us to relook at the ERP rates formulation. So that benefited us from the traffic aspect of it. The second was in terms of mobilizing our resources to lend support to incidents on the roads, as well as to attend to defects. We have always expected to place the resources closer to road segments which are heavily used. But as we collected the data, as the amount shows that certain stretches of the road network did not have that high level of traffic, we started to reorganize the deployment of these resources and put them closer to segments which were heavily trafficked. So these were the two applications that we adopted.
Thank you, Chandra. And our next question will go to Graham. And Graham, you shared with us a great example of using technology to communicate with employees. What resources did you mobilize for that?
Okay, good. Yeah, hello there. We mobilise essentially the hardware would be 55-inch screens in different depots, different locations, along with a mini PC driving the hardware, the screen. You can, and we did look at hardware that had that all inbuilt into, but what I looked at in terms of security for our network, it was best to have a differential mini box that we could lock down completely. We have more scope in terms of flexibility to lock that down, and plus it's an upgradable item later. The technology behind it, we used a web-based telemetry system that allows you to, I think it's called telemetry, to be fair, and a system called Zoapi, which integrates screens and a box to enable you to integrate that with different applications that you install, that you can have an administration to that. So we can monitor that remotely, we can send out information remotely, and it's remotely driven. I hope that helps answer the question.
Yeah, no, thank you, Graham. It really looks like it was a quick, elegant, and simple solution that you're able to implement quickly.
Yes, it was very good. We were contemplating it before COVID, but that escalated it, and it was a quick installation, well delivered. To be fair to the team I've got, it was really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Our next question goes to Martin. Martin, what do you think is the value a road operator can get from mobility data coming from smartphones? And can this data be considered reliable?
Thanks, Christos, for this question. Well, I think with mobile phone data, in my presentation, I mainly focused here on the data derived from mobile radio cells. So this means that the tracking of the phones by the information which cell they are registered currently. And I think especially in cities, these cells are rather small and therefore also allow for a quite precise location of the mobile phone within the network. And therefore, I think staying at home should normally not lead to a change in the cell. So this is pretty easy to monitor. And but there is additionally also in case the phone is moving, and which is the normal case, which when we use the data is that there is algorithms which can, for example, also identify the mode of transport, which is used by the smartphone user. This is done by using the speed of the cell change, so how fast this is happening, and also combine this information with real-time timetables of public transport, for example. So I think based on this is quite a reliable tool, especially in cities where the cell sizes are smaller, to collect especially macroscopic data on transportation systems. For microscopic analysis, I think normally this is not easy possible, especially in Europe and in Germany, due to data privacy issues, because the data which we receive normally is very much aggregated so that you cannot track individual people.
Thank you, Martin. And our next question would actually be to all of our panelists, and it's a two-part question. And since we already have Martin working on an answer, we'll start with Martin. So, and then Seonha, Chandra, and Graham. It is obvious that the lockdown due to COVID-19 has caused a dramatic decrease in traffic. So part one of the question, have any of you looked into the impacts of working from home and the change of traffic behavior in the broader economic context? For example, benefits and costs due to reduced motor traffic. And part two, do you see any policies and reforming opportunities in the long term due to the change of travel behavior? Martin?
Well, we have not looked into economic effects yet, but perhaps I can add two thoughts related to that. So first of all, I think it's very probable that the overall change in travel behavior might rather increase car traffic in midterm. That's my personal opinion, because it's considered as a safe driving when you're isolated in your own car. So I think this is an effect which we might see, which is not so much welcomed by most of the road operators. And second of all, I think also, especially looking into public transport, I think that the post-COVID public transport will need quite some time to recover from this crisis at the moment, because I think everybody of us will look differently now on the high density situations which you sometimes observe by yourself in buses or MRTs. So this will change our look on this quite drastically. And I think it's a big challenge also probably economic challenge, to look into solutions and measures for particular public transport to regain trust again as a non-health risky mode of transportation.
Thank you, Martin. Seonha, could I direct the question to you as well, please?
Yeah, well, I think the in terms of public transport, that's definitely a risk. People do not want to get on the public transport. Even in Korea, we practice that if you do not wear masks, you're not allowed to get on the bus or subway. And the bus and the subway and the rail train, we cannot sit next to the another person. So basically, the capacity of the passengers are very dropped down because we try to make sure we keep the social distance. So people experience in public transport is pretty negative now. So I was just worried that people might tend to purchase more private cars, and we're going back to the car dominant society. That's the things we really worry about in transport community. It's difficult to tackle this issue, but because it's just before the coronavirus, and we we really tried to harder to implement the mass in Korea. So in a way, the most public transport is integrated all together. But now the momentum of doing this is now somehow dismissed. So it's really unfortunate. I don't know, I can't really tell, what we can do now, but we still needed to, we really needed to talk and discuss, what to do in a way that we still keep attracting people to the public transport. It's difficult. It's a very difficult question.
Thank you. And Chandra, have you looked into the impacts of working from home and the change of traffic behavior in the broader economic context relative to benefits and costs due to reduced motor traffic? And do you see any reforming opportunities through policies in that change of in the long term?
Thanks, Christos. I think we have not made an immediate assessment, especially in terms of the cost-benefit analysis. But surely this is something that we will have to undertake. But we would be doing so together with other agencies which are involved in land use, as well as agencies that are involved in the economic status. But what has always been on our planning parameters is to move places of work closer to where you live, thereby providing a shorter commuting trip and reducing the long haul distance traveling. And that's something that we would be experimenting, and it would help to reduce the commuting trips. The other issue that we had to look at was during the initial period, we actually saw a surge of people rushing to get rental vehicles for short-term leasing, and therefore they do not have to share the spaces in public transport. And fortunately, we do have a fair bit of car rental schemes, and these businesses have benefited from this shift in modality. But it is not worrying for us because in Singapore's context, we manage the vehicle growth in a measured, in a very calibrated manner. We have a vehicle quota system that has a preset criteria for vehicle growth. So unlike many other countries which might be worried about a sudden explosion of more private vehicles, cars onto the network, we are fortunately able to manage this with the quota system. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra. And Graham, may I ask the same question of you as well, please?
Yeah, most definitely. As a delivery company, I know that our general manager and myself as being the SMT have been looking at how the positives out of a pandemic that has affected the whole world. So the positives for us is we have challenged where we work from, and I can foresee that we will be in a lot more home working because we don't need to travel. We have looked at good practices within teams so that what we're doing in terms of lone working, we're increasing, reducing our resource requirement. So in terms of a business, we can reduce our cost element and increase our efficiencies by use of technology. And by being exposed by the COVID-19 and some of the things that we've been pushed to do, it's proving some of the cases that it would have taken us a bit longer to prove. And we're getting data that will back that up to enable us to improve our technology, our systems. And I think understanding of how people's mindset in terms of home working, how we support them in terms of the HR, you know, in terms of their mindset, how they're feeling, where people want to work. But it's definitely, in terms of positives, going to affect us as a business. In terms of anything else, in terms of public transport, we wouldn't be affected by that too much, because obviously we travel in and we're quite local. Some people, the ones who aren't, have got cars, so we are a car-centric company, unfortunately. But yes, it will definitely change our business model and our working model moving forward, most definitely.
And Graham, since I already have you answering questions,
Yep.
let me direct the next one to you as well. Do you see the low-code platform as a low-cost ITS solution that can be used in low and middle-income countries and provide solutions there?
Most definitely. I think it's how you approach it. If you, it can be, and depending on the solution you require, it can be the solution. It also can be a precursor to looking at solutions for bespoke solutions that you're going to be implementing. You can trial the idea and design it. The low-cost solutions can do 90% of it, but you might need something that's more detailed. But having a low-cost solution will help you determine that. It will help you determine the use of and how the graphical interface works, how the workflows work. So most definitely, it would depend on the application you use it at. But for me, it's been invaluable, and I can see it working in every aspect of different business areas, and definitely in ITS and different areas across the road networks. It's a very good tool. Yes.
Thank you, Graham. Martin, as we have seen from your presentation, the figures show decreases, and as we have witnessed as well. Did you see anything unexpected from the figures as you have started analyzing the information?
Yes, there's perhaps two things to mention. Maybe first, I think from my personal observation, I have assumed, at least what I see daily on the streets, that the bike traffic would have increased a lot. But if you look at these data, at least all over Germany and Bavaria and Munich itself, the data shows that actually the bike traffic has not increased that much as I would have personally expected, to be honest. And I think the second thing which I, as a researcher, really was surprised to see is that you can really observe in the video data that the people are now really avoiding other people on the street and on pedestrian walkways. And they're even walking bigger circles than before around groups of other people, so keep more distance. So this is really very easily observable, even without algorithms. I think this was really interesting to see. And that's why also one of the reasons why we have to really calibrate all our pedestrian models completely from scratch, actually.
Thank you, Martin. Our next question goes to Chandra. Chandra, Singapore is a world leader in treating and preparing for the deployment of autonomous vehicles, including in the public transport arena and in taxis. Does it appear that the COVID-19 pandemic will accelerate this shift, and how are policymakers thinking about this?
Thanks, Christos. On the autonomous vehicle front, the current position is to have the process developed over several milestones. Milestones in the sense of having it tested in a confined environment, examining all possible scenarios, and once there is a certain level of maturity and confidence, then it is moved out onto the public network, the road network. And this is the philosophy that we have also adapted for the driver-operated environment. So both are the same format. At this point in time, though the COVID situation has triggered different ideas, we are not in a likely position to accelerate the autonomous vehicle. Rather, we would be more prepared to examine if there can be other forms of mobility solutions in addition to autonomous vehicle and driver operated. What could we do to help to make active mobility a lot more practical to be adapted in our network? Thank you.
Chandra, thank you very much. And since we talk about active mobility, we'll turn to Seonha. And I know you've provided some answers in the chat already, Seonha, but that gives you the opportunity to elaborate. So what do you think is the added value a transport operator can have using advanced algorithms like the ones used into this case study?
Yeah, well, I think, the simulation is a great tool. Basically, you can test a lot of different scenarios, and you can test out what's the best options among the many options. So, and is in terms of the costs, without doing a simulation, we needed to do first with a very rich experience, but that can be super accurate. But having those algorithm giving us very good solutions and sometimes answers to the problem. I think that's good values for operators to practice these kind of some algorithms.
Thank you, Seonha. Graham, one question to you relative to, did you implement these or adjust these employee communication systems in the occasion of the pandemic, or they were already in place before? If I recall, you mentioned that you were thinking about it, but you accelerated them because of the pandemic.
So prior to the pandemic happening, we had ordered the equipment because it was a note just to give some information at times. What expedited it was the pandemic, so we made sure they were installed. We made sure we had a business process in the background in terms of what was displayed. Was it pertinent to the pandemic? We changed the view on the screens that were in view of the pandemic. So it did change on my mind of thought. It changed how the business process was to be when we issued the information, the type of information on there, the frequency, who would be able to see it. So the idea was there. We were going to do it as not a low level, but an information board. But it was quickly identified that we could use this in the COVID-19 pandemic to send that information to our workforce without using mobile phone technology, as I said earlier. And COVID-19 definitely made it happen, and it definitely made different managers throughout the organization think about the system and embrace it. It embraced the technology. A lot of implementation of new technology, I find, is getting people to embrace it and understand it, and COVID-19 has helped me as my role do that. So yes.
Thank you. And do you see this approach as also being able to be used for the conduct of road safety audits?
So is this a low code?
Yes.
Yeah. So most definitely. So depending on what you have, obviously the formulation of the forms for road safety audits is a form filling exercise. So you most definitely can. You can put workflows within that process. So it's not just a form, it's dynamic drop downs, it's dynamic information pertinent to road safety audits. You can capture video, you can capture photos, and it can be accessed via a desktop to review that as well. And you can then increase that by putting different workflows from the road safety audit and get approvals. There's a lot you can do with it. So most definitely, if you write down the workflow that you want, it can do that.
Thank you, Graham. And our last question will go to Chandra. Chandra, in your opinion, how did having such an ITS system in place enhance your ability to manage situations of disruption and in giving mobility services to road users?
Thanks, Christos. If I could reiterate that one example that the ITS systems really benefited us. This is on the ERP rates review process. If we were not alerted timely, if we had not programmed into the system with an algorithm to alert us on the downward trend in traffic, we would have been blindsided. We would have been retaining the road pricing rates when the road network was completely empty, and this would have been drastic in the sense that the professionalism of the organization would have been put at stake. So fortunately, we were able to leverage on the ITS system and take a bold step in recalibrating the rates. And at the same time, being able at this point in time, even being bold enough to say that we are prepared not to reintroduce the rates because the data that we have collected shows that the road network is still able to cope with the current demand. And we are tracking the progress on a real-time basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra. And thank you once again to all of our presenters for the excellent material that they shared with us today, and to the attendees. In closing, may I ask one last question to Patrick relative to what else is PIARC planning as a service to the members as a response to COVID-19. Patrick?
Thank you, Christos. Yeah, maybe you haven't seen the disclaimer, so let me just mention that now. So basically it's used on your own risk, right? So what you have seen today may or may not be relevant for your particular situation. Thank you, Christos, and congratulations for managing the Q&A. So what are the next steps on our side? So of course, we'll publish video recordings and presentations from our webinars. So you may have seen that on our website already. We are planning further PIARC webinars in English, Spanish and French, but English, the next ones are about the impact on the virus on the workforce and the impact of the pandemic on road safety. So please stay tuned. You will all receive an invitation to register. We have published 2 notes, as you've seen, and we now have planned an in-depth report, and it's scheduled for September with a further survey that will invite all our members at PIARC to contribute their experience and their best practice. And the webpage here is something you're familiar with. I suppose this is where you can find all the information that we discussed. We have 2 polls open if you want to share with us issues of concern and to identify yourself if you want to share your practice. Those 2 links are also available from our website, so you don't need to note it down. Thanks again to well, all our panelists, to everyone in the audience for being with us today, and to the response team, the colleagues whose names are on the screen now. We are working rather hard. We try to be active and try to be of use to the road community and the road transport community. So thank you very much. Don't hesitate and contact us at info@piarc.org. That's always very welcome. And I invite you to check our website. Thank you, and stay safe. Thank you, everyone.